4 years ago.
You know he wouldn't let me do that.
Julie stammered. Confusion splashed across her face.
John, that's pretty obvious. He barely lets me go to school. Why the heck would he let me go home with you? Are you feeling all right? You seem pale as hell.
I laughed sickly, my quavering hands clenching together. I shoved them in my pockets, hiding the raw, scratched-away flesh and glancing to my left nervously as I continued. I'm fine, just a little sick is all. Julie's one good eye scanned me up and down, her concern building, her hands moving to brush more blonde hair in front of her right eye, obscuring the way the bruise had fused it shut.
John, please, you don't seem normal.
She stammered.
What's going on? I told you, my eye was just an accident. He didn't mean to. He tries not to hit my face.
Her tone dropped slightly, her eyes sliding to the ground as she continued.
He says I'm too pretty to have bruises there.
My teeth clenched, my fists beginning to shake in my pockets, before I quickly regained my composure. Really? I laughed, careful not to show my palms as I gave an exaggerated smile and grabbed the straps of my backpack. I'm fine. But I might not be at school on Friday. I think I caught what Mark has. If he's not coming to school, there's no way in hell I am. I might call in sick. She looked at me, skepticism arcing through her hollow eye.
You haven't seemed at all sick.
She stammered.
John, if this is about me, I told you I'm fine.
You don't seem fine, I muttered to myself. How could you be fine? I haven't saved you yet.
What?
She questioned, taking a step towards me.
I can't hear you, John. You know you can tell me anything, right? I care about you more than anything.
A twisted smile crawled across my face, ripping through my flesh as my fingers tightened again around an invisible object. I know, I said softly, my heavy, sleepless eyes meeting her form. And I care about you more than you know.
Okay.
She smiled uncomfortably, seeing the black rings of insomnia under my eyes, the way my gaze shook slightly, unable to maintain focus on anything for too long.
And I lied. You do look pretty damn sick.
She breathed worriedly before forcing out a laugh.
It's only Wednesday, though. Are you sure you're gonna make it to Friday?
I smiled, grabbing her hand softly, hoping she wouldn't feel the lacerations. I'll be fine, I grinned softly. Please don't worry about me. This has been a tough week so far for you.
Thank you, John.
She whispered softly, her head resting against my shoulder.
I promise, everything will be all right.
My smile twitched into view, my tears freezing in my hollow eyes as I gripped her hand. I know, I breathed, my lungs shaking. Soon. Present day. Time seemed to drag on for an eternity, but when my eyes opened and I was greeted by a warm feeling in my throat and an immense pain in my arm, I came to realize that mere milliseconds had passed. I turned to find myself on the ground, Julie beside me, her hand gripped so tight around my arm that the skin had gone dead white. She scrambled to pull me back further as a rattle of chains became near deafening. Julie looked at me and her eyes went wide, fixating on my throat. At her strange reaction, my hands instinctively rose to feel my skin and came away soaked in warm crimson. I tried not to panic, but the pain started soon after, the gash feeling as if it caught fire and my neck was fixed in a stranglehold by barbed wire. My eyes went wide and my hands splayed out in front of me, unsure of what to do. Nothing came from my breaths, and my limbs began to curl together into stagnation as I lost control of them.
It's not deep.
Julie cried, her flashing blonde eyes showing just the opposite of her panicked lie. I turned back to Callie to see her eyes locked on me, her face contorted in horror as a panicked gasp escaped her throat. Her mouth spoke, but nothing came out. Despite her attempts to keep her eyes open, the surrounding air suddenly quavered again, and as her lids slipped shut, her limbs buckled harshly, her skull splintering against the pavement.
What the hell are you doing trying to save me?
Julie cried, wrenching my head away from Callie, her hands clawing and trying to cover my throat, fear and disbelief igniting across her face.
What the fuck was that?
The world swam as if placed in a vat of boiling slag, and my senses began to dull, faster and faster. I was beginning to lose track of where my body ended and the surrounding air began. Everything felt like one uniformly distant mass. I could barely hear Julie's muffled cries, and although she appeared to be shaking me, I felt nothing at all.
I hate you, John. I hate you.
Julie cried, her eyes sparkling with tears.
You can't save everyone.
She tried desperately to pull me up, fear painting her face a horrid shade of gray.
I shouldn't have come.
She screamed.
I was fine watching from a distance.
Her voice died in my mind as everything went dark. I barely recall seeing some lights at that point, erupting into view, streaking through my vision like ghosts. I was sure they were from the car that had been approaching, but I could no longer grasp what this might have entailed. Julie's pale face went dead white, and her cries turned into desperate shouts as the ground rushed forwards, and I was vaguely aware of the blood pooling under my broken body. It felt cold now. "4 years ago." "Where is she?" I breathed, panicked, looking at my mother with shaking irises. Did the school contact her uncle? Why is she absent?
John, of course the school contacted her. She's probably just sick.
My mother spoke softly, horror flashing through her eyes at my panic.
What has gotten into you? Are you feeling alright? You've done nothing but lock yourself in your room for the past few weeks. Your father and I are beginning to worry.
She glanced at the classroom behind me, trying hard to keep her voice to a whisper.
I'm sure Julie is fine.
She continued.
She fell and got that nasty black eye, right? She probably wanted a day or two to get that healed a little better. Look at you. You should be worried about yourself. I'm gonna call your father home from work.
"No!" I snapped, my voice raising louder than I meant it to. I stammered. Really, I'm fine. Julie was supposed to help me on a project is all. I'll have to yell at her later though, I guess. I quickly slunk back to my desk before she could respond.
Alright.
She stammered out to the class before regaining her composure.
I hope you enjoyed your break. The short answer section is up next. You have 5 minutes for any last-minute study.
A collective groan emanated from the crowd, but I was no longer able to focus on anything in the room. The walls curled around me like horrid black masses, closing in on my lungs as my hands shook violently. My skin felt pale and clammy, my eyes unblinking as thoughts rushed through my head at a blinding pace. What the hell had he done to her? My hand tightened around the invisible object, the blade glinting in my imagination as the world swam with grayscale smudges. My teeth gritted, my hands absent-mindedly carving into themselves, the flesh flaking away like paper, raw, wet skin stinging in the cold air. Maybe I wouldn't wait until tomorrow after all. That monster didn't deserve another day.
"John?"
A voice whispered quietly, Rachel's hazel eyes flashing into view as she leaned over my desk.
Where's Mark?"
I snapped out of my thoughts to have the cold world crash down around me, my skin prickling with ice. I stammered, my mouth moving in panic before I even registered a question. I finally met her eyes, however, and then glanced to Mark's desk beside me. Empty. Oh, I stammered, laughing awkwardly and trying to shake my thoughts away. He's sick. Sorry, he told me he probably wasn't gonna be here today or tomorrow, probably.
Oh,
She breathed softly, before picking up her tone and smiling.
okay.
I'm sorry, I stammered. I'm sure you saw he was pretty sick. If he's missing school, it must have gotten worse. My thoughts cleared further, and I slowly sat upright in my chair before looking at Rachel slowly. Why do you ask? I continued. That's awfully considerate of you. She laughed, putting her hands on my desk.
You're his friend. If I could figure it out, I'm sure he told you.
I couldn't help but chuckle, the conversation pulling me further from the blackness that had begun to envelop me. Oh, I laughed. He's not very good at hiding, is he?
Never was.
She grinned, her eyes flashing slightly.
But it's gonna be his fault if I say yes to someone else first. How long does that tool expect me to wait?
My heart swelled, my dreary eyes lighting up. I'll urge him on, I joked. But, Rachel, it's not against the rules for a girl to ask out a guy.
Oh, like Julie did to you?
She chuckled.
That's cute and all, but hell no. It'll be good for Mark to work up some courage for once in his life.
My joy dissipated instantly, my eyes flashing with horror at the mention of Julie's name. Rachel's pale form was smudged to nothing, hideous thoughts again swirling in my head. What happened to her? School was her only escape. If she wasn't able to come, that meant she was either trapped or something far worse. My fists clenched. I barely heard Rachel saunter off as my mom stood, making a gesture with her hands and speaking muffled words. The class began again on the test, but I could only stare at the blinding white page, its form pulsing slightly in my vision as I bounced my leg nervously. I wasn't sure how long I stayed in that state, but I was suddenly jolted awake by a faint glimmer of gray in my vision. A piece of paper fluttering like a moth to land on the edge of my desk. Not wanting to look too suspicious by turning, I stole one quick glance to see Callie nod slightly. Her green eyes seemed eerily dark, the reflection of her black hair making them crawl with tendrils of blackness. I picked up the paper slowly and unfolded it on the desk. What is wrong? The writing was heavy and black, scratched into the page like someone had attempted to carve into the desk behind it when they wrote it. I slowly picked up my pencil, ready to write some bullshit answer back when the door to the classroom suddenly opened. The heavy wood creaked softly as Julie slowly stepped inside. My heart dropped like a rock. Something was horribly wrong. There were no signs of recent physical damage, but she was deathly pale, her hands gripped tightly around her backpack straps, shaking lightly. She had never before shown an ounce of weakness to anyone but me, but as the classroom all turned to look at her, she seemed unable to keep from quaking.